Hi, I'm Rocky Agrawal. I'm a former journalist who's worked at leading online newspapers including WashingtonPost.com and StarTribune.com. I wanted to talk today about an important announcement from Google regarding how they handle wire service content in Google News. First, a little bit of background. Newspapers typically license content from wire services such as the Associated Press, AFP, Reuters, and a few others. They incorporate this content both in their print products as well as on their websites. Up until Friday, if you were searching Google News and you came across an AP story, what would happen is that you would end up going to a newspaper that had licensed that content from the Associated Press. As of Friday's announcement from Google, they are now hosting that content on their own servers. So if you did a search for, say, the Iraq War, and a story came up from the AP, you would see that story right on Google News. This presents significant implications for the newspaper business. Newspapers derive a lot of their traffic from search engines these days. So a lot of that traffic, if it gets captured into Google News, will no longer be available for those newspapers to monetize. But it also has significant implications, I think, on how news stories will be presented in the future. I want to take a look at the same AP story presented on Google News as well as a number of newspaper websites. So we'll start off with the My site. So here we have a story about a recent court decision allowing Mexican trucks to come into the United States. First thing you should notice here is that this site, although that it has branding from My San Antonio, is actually hosted by the Associated Press. So the AP will reskin sites for their member papers, and this is used especially by the smaller news organizations that don't have the technology resources to bring the AP news feeds into their own systems and publish them out. So here, most of what you see is actually AP content. So this part, beginning right about here, is hosted by the AP and is AP content up until about here. The rest of the frame is owned by or developed by the San Antonio Express News. So here you've got some additional ads, you've got some footer information, and some more ads off here, and more ads up here, and we can scroll even more ads. So a significant amount of advertising that has been wrapped around essentially wire service content. Within the AP information, you can see some additional things that they've added. Video, which doesn't look to be related to this story, and then some more ads, and then we've got some related, well, in theory, related blog posts from Technorati. I don't know how related they actually are. So we'll go back now, and we'll take a look at the same story from ABC News. Okay, and here you can see on abcnews.com we've got the same story. We've got some options for commenting. One thing I like about what the AP or what ABC News has done is that they actually related topics. So they've plucked out that stories related to George Bush, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and the Sierra Club. And if you want more information about those, you can click to get that content. One thing I don't like about the way ABC News handles this story is that they've broken it up into multiple pages. So you can see here the story. If you want to read more, you've got to click and go off to another page to get that additional information. And just as we saw with the San Antonio Express News, we've got more ads that we can scroll over here to see. Next, I want to take a look at the Houston Chronicle. The Houston Chronicle is a larger paper, and they have ingested the AP newsfeed in-house and republished it out themselves. So here you've got the same content in the Houston Chronicle banner. This page is much lighter in terms of advertising than the other two that we've seen. But what I found interesting was over here we've got some search results that are related to this story. And this is something that I think more newspapers ought to be doing, but just doing better. Here you can see we've got some duplicate stories on the wires. It's not uncommon to see the same story moved a few times. And actually this fourth link, which looks like a different story, isn't really a different story. It's the same story, but it's a version that ran in the print edition. So they changed the headline when they put it in the print edition, ran it on the front page, as we can see, and there you go. And we've got some comments here from readers that about this story. But I also find interesting about this that a story that should be huge in the Houston area about Mexican trucks being able to cross over in the U.S., the Chronicle decided to use a wire service. This is something that they should be owning, in my opinion. So we're going to go back now, and we're going to take a look at how Google News handled this story. So again, in all the pages that we've looked at, the context is the same, the presentation is different. Here we see that the Associated Press logo is up at the top of the page. We've got the story. We've got a link back to Google News here. And only at the bottom of the page do we have any real Google branding. And we can see that it's hosted by Google. One thing you may have noticed about this page is that it loaded much faster than the other pages that we saw. And the other big thing to notice is that there's no advertising on this page. I suspect that that will change over time and that we'll see advertising appear on this page. The other thing that I find very interesting is that Google has related news, and you can see that the relevance is much better here than we saw on the Houston Chronicle website. First of all, we don't have a lot of duplicated stories, but we also have future stories. You can see here that this story that we're looking at was created 2 days ago, but we've got links to stories that were created 16 hours ago. So if you wanted to follow along on a story, you can actually do that with Google News, because you're getting not just back content, you're getting future content from when the story was published. Overall, the user experience on Google is much more user-centric than we typically find on news websites. They haven't put forth all the obstacles that newspapers typically throw in front of users who are trying to get to content. The pages load fast. There are no pop-ups. When I was first trying to get to the various stories, abcnews.com and Express News, they both presented me with pop-ups. Google News doesn't have any registration requirements. Right now there are no ads. I expect that when there are ads, they'll be much less intrusive than the ads that we saw on the various websites that we looked at. All the content is on one page. I don't have to click off to get the next part of the story. And we've got the advanced features such as the ability to see content that has come in since the original story was published. This presents a whole new way of presenting the news from what we've seen recently, and I think it presents a significant challenge to news organizations in terms of making them look at how they deliver the news.